Hello coaches, thanks for joining me for another Modern Soccer Coach World Cup breakdown. Something a bit different today. The role of data is obviously very, very big at the moment in the professional game and into amateur and youth game as well. Arsene Wenger is heading up the technical department of FIFA in the World Cup. They've been producing World Cup reports, data reports with an awful lot of information. 52 pages for every game, an insane amount of information. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through a report from a coach's viewpoint and see if you're watching a game, what you would value, what type of information and why you might value it. So I'm going to go through that today. Before we start, please like and subscribe so you don't miss any more of the breakdowns. Please also check out the new Modern Soccer Coach Scanning book on the link below. Okay, let's go. All right, so the game we're going to take a look at is US versus Iran, which I'm sure quite a few of you watched yesterday. Really, really interesting game. Really, really enjoyed it. Let's take a look at the breakdown from the FIFA report. So the first page is a match summary. You've got the teams, you've got the substitutions, you've got distribution in the final third that we're going to take a deeper dive into later on. This is the only thing that I have questions about in the report is the middle, is the shapes. Now, I'm sure if you subscribe to these videos, I'm sure you know that I'm a big fan of shapes and certain formations and systems and how they evolve and change. And I don't know why these shapes aren't more specific in the report. It might be because shapes just in general are a bit subjective. There's a lot of objective data in this here. So I would love to chat to someone from FIFA. I might try that in the next few weeks to try and get a bit more information as to why this picture in the middle, this formation picture, isn't a bit more official or structured. You can see there's gaps between the players are pretty expansive in the shape. So not sure why that is. As we get into the key statistics, we start to look at the real context and depth that FIFA are providing with these reports. So this here is key statistics match summary. What's interesting for me and what's different from the almost kickoff is in the first line there is possession, which is a different color. Now you've got red, gray, and green, and you've got a gray number there. It's 11.2%, and that's in contest. So usually you've got possession is either two numbers, but possession is now three numbers, and I think that's great because it gives more context. So that might be after a block shot, after an aerial duel, or a 50-50 ball. They're now tracking that as in contest balls. So 11.2% of the game was in contest, and then you've got the possession breakdowns from that there. Another thing that's interesting from the FIFA report, and we'll see later on, is the physical data, which they've now linked to the tactical. You've got that at the very bottom, high speed, zone 4, distance covered. Why is it high speed and not just distance covered? Probably because the type of game, but we'll get into the physical data in a little bit. If I'm a coach and I'm looking at this, the biggest number for me personally that jumps out in terms of the match is not necessarily completed passes. You can see there it's 82 to 88 in favor of the US, but more of receptions in the final third, which I find is a very, very interesting stat. So Iran had 77 receptions in the final third, where US had 117. So if I'm watching the game and thinking, how did we do offensively? I'd be pretty happy with that number if I was a US coach. We're going to go into a bit more detail with these numbers, and what FIFA have done is they've used this almost as an overview, and then they dig a little bit deeper, which I really like. The next slide is phases of play, and this is where I think we can see FIFA being really deliberate in providing a tactical context of the game. I think this is really cool because they're using different types of spatial and physical features around positions, distances, to know when a team is in the build-up, opposed, build-up, unopposed. Again, a number that jumps out to me is that final third statistic. How much time did the US spend in the final third? 26%. How much time did Iran spend in the final third? Only 16%. So why is the final third number important to me as a coach? Well, if it was me looking at our in-possession game, I want to know how much time we were actually pinning the opposition inside their defensive third, which is dominance on the ball. So 26 against 16 is a pretty good number for that. Similarly, when you go to out of possession, I want to be in a low block as little as possible. So 16% against 22% is good for the US. Less is good in that way. And spending more time in the press or spending more time in a mid block, 25% against 21. Marginally, but still a good picture. if you're a US coach. So I really, really like this picture. I really like this page because you can go and you can compare yours against the opposition. And again, the context is really, really good for a coach. Now we're moving into in possession numbers, which again, the depth and detail and context here is really, really good. This picture is really good. It shows you your team height and your length whenever you're in those different phases. When you're building low, what type of height have you got with your team in terms of what's the distance between the defenders and the forward line? Build up midfield is the distances. Again, it's going to be a little bit lower in terms of verticality. And the final third phase is, again, that distance. That's pretty normal. I think by reading these reports, what I'm seeing is the difference in the width in the final third. And the narrowness of teams is surprised me, but impressed me as well, is that these teams are now looking to break low blocks or mid blocks, and they're looking to do it through combination play as opposed to width. So their team is a lot more narrow. Maybe that's to get more overloads, or maybe that's to get different types of combinations in terms of positions. But it's really interesting. There's not a lot of difference between the two teams. That's Iran. This is the US. You can see there's not a lot of variation between one team and the other. Maybe the start of their build. But you can see there in the final third phase of the US is 44/38, and Iran's is 47/35. So not a lot of difference, but just something that's a bit interesting when you look at, again, expansive shapes and depths of teams. Now we get into line breaking numbers, and this is fantastic. Again, to have this information as just a general consumer reviewer of the game during a World Cup, and this is available 24 hours after the match. It's unbelievable. Line breaking passes. So basically passes that pass through a line of pressure, passes that can open up defenses, much more valuable than simple possession, because a lot of possession might happen underneath any form of pressure. So it might just be that the opposition are letting them have that there. This line breaking number can tell you exactly how they're actually trying to break a team down. So the context, again, is very, very important. What I love is the number up in the top corner there. You've got an arrow, and then you've got a circle, and then you've got a loop. And that breaks down whether a team is trying to go over pressure, around pressure, or through pressure. So 32 is to go through pressure. 46 is to go around pressure. 64 is to go over pressure. And I think what's interesting when you look at this is you can see the distribution. It's not really, really high on one side. Normally, these teams are at such a high level that they'll try different ways to go through opponents. For example, if you compare Iran to the US, the numbers are a bit higher. But again, the distribution's pretty even. 42 to go through, 48 to go around, 53 to go over. It's not really loaded or stacked. And that's what I found by looking at these reports. When you look at the three pitches, that's how they break down different levels of pressure. So maybe FIFA, I mentioned about not using systems and formations. Maybe FIFA are saying, all right, well, they don't really see it that way right now. They see units or levels or tiers of pressure. So when you're up against 4 tiers of pressure, 4 lines of pressure, it's obviously going to be a lot harder to break that and get players in between those lines to receive the ball. So it's only 8 there for the US. But when you have 2 levels of pressure, then it's 45. And when there's 3, there's 90. So again, just challenging the way that you're looking at the game and giving you a little bit of more information as to how teams are setting up and trying to break each other down. Comparing each other, again, is really, really important. The levels of detail, again, jumps out to me because the next step, what they have is progressive passers. You can look at both teams here. That's Iran's team of their progressive passers. This is the US team. So for you US fan, and you can look at, say, that second column and see line breaks completed and what players jump out. And maybe 15 looks to be the higher number. Okay, who's 15? Tyler Adams is 15. Weston McKennie's 15. Tim Ream is 15, which is really, really good for a centre-back. So looking at which players are breaking lines, which players are more progressive or more riskier with their passing, again, gives you more context in the game, takes you away from general possession being the key to what players are doing with possession. And then at the far side, distribution type, the number of passes against crosses and ball progression, which would be a dribble, really, really interesting. Passing networks, again, something that I really like and getting you the depth and detail and context of the game. This is more on the relationship side. So if you go to the far right there, you can see top 5 player passers. So Tyler Adams is passing to Weston McKennie 3.8% of the time US are in possession. And that's a pretty high number. Sometimes you see something there that jumps out to you. But I think if you're Greg Berhalter, you'd be really happy with Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie being progressive passers and then also having that strong relationship with each other. The next slide is attempts on goal. Again, more context. Goal in red, obviously Iran did the score, so there's no red. Shots on target, shots off target, blocked, and then incomplete. And then you can see around the goal of where those shots landed. I'm a little bit surprised that there's no XG here, a little bit more data information for each shot. But again, I'm sure there's a reason why. They then break down just individually as a list what players had what shots. The US one, again, tells you a little bit more. You can already see that there's a few more shots. You've got that goal. What typically you see when you look at shot maps, and I look at quite a few shot maps, so you see that a team's successful with more shots from a closer distance. We've done some presentations on Modern Soccer Coach. If you want to take a look at them, go to the website, modernsoccercoach.com/shop, around data and around reading more shot maps. Oliver Gage has done some great work, APFA, make sure you check that out as well. And then you've got the list. Again, this is just good to have where you can just skim through and see names and outcome. Body part is a really interesting one, and the type of delivery. Again, FIFA going into real detail and depth around what type of delivery. Was it a pass? Was it a cross? Was it even a loose ball that they got the shot from? And then crosses. Again, the number completed, but there you've got the delivery type. So again, that context. What I really like about this is you can get the team view. Just above me is the team view. You can see Dest, who was brilliant again, 4 crosses, and Robinson, 8 crosses. So the 2 fullbacks in the US jump out to you. And then on the left, you can see the areas of where those are from. Now, again, context gives you a good idea to compare this to the opposition. Iran had 14 crosses, and their right back got forward as well. The delivery type is also quite interesting. Outswingers Iran were pretty high on outswingers. US were pretty high on outswingers as well. With 8, I'm sure that's something that we're going to find out in the technical report after the tournament is on as well. This one, again, really, really interesting. Offering to receive. So where can you find players in the system? So inside the shape, Iran, 188 times someone offered to receive the ball inside their shape. But the US was 338. So if you connect that with, again, progressive passes and you're offering to receive, you can get that understanding of context really, really well about the game. And the US were very progressive with their passing. They were very good in possession, particularly in the first half when they were chasing the game before they got the goal. And you can see there on the left, 303 offers in the middle third. So trying to break that pressure against the Iran middle block, whereas Iran only got 242 in the middle third. So that's not a stat to say that's why they won the game. It just gives you a better understanding of why the game played out in certain ways. And then, of course, you've got the right side, which is the players, what they did, which players are looking for the ball in certain areas. So if you go in the second column, offers made, offers received, which player jumps out? Timothy Weah jumps out. Tyler Adams jumps out. They're at 93 and 99 respectively. So it tells you that Timothy Weah has taken up some good positions that's being tracked in order to get the ball in and around pressure, which is helpful as a coach whenever you're getting an understanding and appreciation of how your team performed in that match. Again, this one's fascinating. Movements to receive, the type of movements, where exactly that player is looking for it, and how that then is distributed amongst every possession. So if there's 306 movements to receive from Iran, how do they break that down? And a lot of it is in front of pressure, which is quite natural because teams will invariably try and move pressure and try and move blocks. But there was only 91 that was looking in between pressure, whereas if you go in the US, it was 120. So again, more context around where players are looking for the ball and what areas they're looking for it and the types of movement that they're going to look for the ball. over a course of time, this would be really, really good information for a scouting report, because it would tell you how a team wants to attack and what type of areas they're trying to exploit. Out of possession, defensive metrics, again, great detail. This gives you the amount of turnovers, how they're regaining possession. Iran weren't necessarily pressing high. They needed to chase the game later on. So let's look at the top left. 63 forced turnovers, 53 times they regained possession. Compare it to the US, 74 turnovers, 45 times they regained possession. So the US were a bit more aggressive with their pressure, particularly in the first half. And the state of the game does change. Again, if you remember the last 10 minutes of this game, US had to absorb some pressure. So that slightly moves the metrics. Game state, that's called. I think the US would be quite happy with their defensive metrics here. And again, you can go on the right side and you can see what players contributed where defensively and how they picked up possession. Musa really, really high on 7, which shows his work rate and his ability to pick up possession is very, very high. Similar to in possession height and length, it just gives you an appreciation here of what a team looks like in terms of their front to back distance when they're pressing, when they're in that block, when in that low block. Both teams are quite similar, but again, the width can change by a few meters, or maybe the depth changes, but not drastically. But again, just gives you a good appreciation of some information that you probably didn't know watching the game back. Defensive pressure can be a bit of a noisy metric, because you can see here there's a lot of little dots and arrows on the pitch. But I think what's really good of what FIFA have done is most direct pressures. So it's Tyler Adams against Ramin Razman, and you can see two players matching up against each other. You can also see their positions, so you can see which players are picking up what possession. And then again, it's a good metric to look in that middle chart to see how teams are playing against each other. Both teams were pretty even. There's not a lot of distance between both teams and their defensive pressure numbers, but I would say, again, game state and Iran chasing it later on, and US being 1-0 up at the break changes the type of game. So you would expect Iran's numbers to get a bit higher in the second half. Goalkeeping, as everyone knows, I'm not a goalkeeper expert, but it's good to take a look at this and see they've got an involvement map, which is phenomenal to show when a goalkeeper is needed and a goalkeeper is used. I'm going to need to bring a goalkeeper on to discuss this more, because I have no clue what the left side is for. Distribution is a pretty common one. Total distributions, most goalkeepers are going to kick from feet, not a lot of throws, similar to both sides. Not a lot of goalkeepers are kicking from their hands in 2022. You can see that second column, it's only happening once or twice. So most of the distribution is coming from the feet, as goalkeepers are used as outfield players. Goal prevention is another interesting one. The type of the body that was used to make a save, or the type of intervention, which I'm guessing is a save. Again, the depth and detail that FIFA are now giving us as fans or viewers of the game is pretty unbelievable. It's really, really good. Aerial control, again, a good way to look at how a goalkeeper looks at the box. If you're a goalkeeper coach and you're going through this, it must be amazing to give you the context of what your goalkeeper dealt with. Set plays is always a big one, and this one's really good for context, where they had set plays, how many set plays they had. You can see here the US, 42 total set plays, and you can see those direct into the area, 3 from the left, 1 from the right, and 1 from the edge of the penalty area as well. Again, just breaks it down, just gives you that overview of what your set piece distribution looked like. Individual data in possession, phenomenal. This is just an overview, very, very detailed, an overview of passes completed, percentages, line breaking, ball progression, which is almost dribbling. Then adding that up with in possession, offers and receptions, and we looked at that before. Out of possession, again, just an individual overview of what players are doing and how much possession is being regained, and tackles and duels and clearances and all the defensive side of the game, breaking that down and giving you really, really good detail with that. And then finally, you've got individual data, physical data. And this is the first time I've seen, again, from a technical report available to the public, this is the first time I've seen physical data aligned with tactical data per se. So you can see with total distance, the different zones which I haven't seen before, again, given out to the public. Sprint numbers, top speed numbers, which I haven't seen before. So that's go on the right side. If you look on the right side, those top speed numbers, that's when a player hit those top speeds. It's not who's the quickest. It's that number in the context of the game. So Timothy Weah hit a 34, which is pretty high. But Weston McKennie, 33.4. It doesn't mean they're the quickest on the team, but it means in that game they got to that speed, which is really, really impressive. And that's the end of the report. 52 pages in total. So everyone will say it. You can get lost in the numbers. And the most important number is US 1, Iran 0, because that was obviously the final score. But over a period of time, that type of information that can give you breakdowns of where your team's at and what they did and how they broke someone down, you can then start to see where your team is trending, or you can start to see that they didn't hit maybe some metrics that you would want to hit from a tactical point of view. It's also really, really good from a scouting standpoint. So again, one game isn't enough. You probably need 5, 6. I'm imagining some of these World Cup teams are looking at probably 10 to 20 of these reports, and they're compiling them with their own data analysts, and they're getting that number on top of their game model, which is detail upon detail. But I think it's amazing that FIFA are starting to make this information, first of all, accessible to all of us just watching the game, but also then giving us context. Arsene Wenger's doing an amazing job with FIFA language. The links are below. If you want to look at the reports, please check them out on the links below. I'll put them down there. But there's also some really, really good educational stuff that I wasn't aware of and I went into. And I love that FIFA are trying to educate the viewer now as to how they're watching the game. And again, those contexts, those phases, that detail, that depth, allowing viewers to be coaches per se, that will help us get more of an understanding. It will also help us when we're organising our team. It will also lead to more conversations amongst staff. Did you see this? Well, I saw that there. More conversations lead to greater levels of awareness, challenging information, checking information. That's how you get better as a staff and better as a coach. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks so much for watching. Before you go, please like and subscribe, and I will see you very soon. Goodbye.